Greetings guys, Dr. George again, just following up from our last video. We're in a video series that I guess we can just go ahead and call the interview season. So many folks are actually applying for jobs, residency programs, postgraduate trainings, and just getting a lot of CV requests for me to look at and review. And like I said in the previous video, that your resume is important, but again, it's not the most important. So I want to give some context because I got some questions from the last video about that, and because I got some comment that said, hey, some residency programs use it to actually disqualify folks. But again, think of it, it's a disqualifier in some cases, not necessarily a qualifier. Your resume or CV may not even be reviewed by the interviewer for 3 steps into the process. So, think of it, you'll fill out some type of application or something online, someone reviews it, determines are you qualified, then you may get like a phone interview where another individual, possibly from an HR department, will actually give you a phone call, do a 15-minute or less interview to ask you some questions that are specific to that job. And then finally you get the full interview where you're actually called into the office, or a Skype interview where you're actually meeting face to face with someone, and then they're actually going to look at your interview. So your interview and your resume at that moment. And that's what's the most important thing, is you, of how you interact in this interview, not the piece of paper, but it's how you are. So after going through this process of myself of interviewing hundreds of people at this point in my career, I wanted to provide the next piece of advice I have for you. And it's weird because I've interviewed hundreds of people, and it's so strange for folks to actually talk about themselves. That's the advice. Make sure you talk about yourself. So many times people will say, well, Dr. G, man, it's so hard. Interviews are so difficult. It feels like I'm always being asked stuff on the spot. Why are you feeling blindsided and try to answer things on the spot? You gave the interviewer all of the answers to the test. So when they ask you questions, you should talk about you and the wonderful experiences that you took time, energy, and effort to put on your resume or CV. When you talk about yourself, make sure you're talking about your experiences. Make sure you're talking about you. Oftentimes we hear say, this is what we did, and this is what we brought to resolution, and this is how we handle it. Guess what? I'm not hiring a we, I'm hiring a you. So you need to talk about you a lot more. Advice about when you're talking about yourself, every story that you have should be about, guess what you put on your resume. Oftentimes, so many times, people would talk about everything except the cool things that were on their resume. When I was on that side of actually bringing in candidates and interviewing, sometimes I would actually find cool things on person's resume that would make me want to talk and hear about it more, and I would be disappointed because that individual would never talk about it. So talk about the experience, talk about yourself, but make sure every story has an arc. Talk about the situation that presented to me, give me some detail about it, talk about the tasks that were taken care of, the activities that you did particularly, then ultimately the resolution. One key point about the resolution, it doesn't have to be a positive resolution. It could be a negative circumstance or not how you actually intended it to be, but I want to also hear about what you learned from it. So that's what we have for this one. So the second piece of advice, first we had from the last video, make sure you tailor or cater your resume or CV to the particular job that you are applying for. Second piece of advice, make sure that you are talking about yourself and talking about the articles and items and experiences that are on your CV, and make sure it follows a particular story guideline of the STAR. I guess it's the STAR method: the situation, the task, the activities, and the resolutions that you have. So until next time, guys, great talking to you. I look forward to seeing you in our next video. Have a great evening.